I stopped at the last message because there's an entire different view of this here. There's so many ways to look at this. You'll remember in the message that I said that if you do show all of this great differentiation of the human species, and you force everyone on the planet to realize just how good we are, how great we are, the propagandists will try to use that. They will initially hate it, despise it, because they tried to kill it for so many decades and failed. But being the greedy swine that they are, more reptilian than swine, they will try to seize an opportunity from it. They will try to showboat it, advocate it, try to be the ringmasters of it, and cash in on it, get their cut from all of it. Promote it, but promote it in ways that suits them and their twisted existence of pure greed, absolute avarice, things that only appear to be humanoid. You've got to get it into your brain that just because something walks around on two legs and has two arms and two eyeballs does not mean it's a human being. Once you realize that, then you understand when somebody says there are such things as reptilian propagandists, more reptile and more robotic and more greedy in their thinking than any human being could ever imagine being or want to be. They would do whatever they could to carve the pie up and divide it amongst themselves, and we humans would find ourselves left adrift again, and then to be reduced again. I'm going to read this as verbatim as I can. If we create many human websites, and we overload the enemy with our real and many identities, what will happen to the queer propagandists? They own the medias now, but what if the medias cannot achieve the goals of the cult of the asshole inside the hideous Boston horrid zone? You do not believe that? I can go in there and take photographs. I can go in there and take videos of the cult of the asshole. But if I show them to you, you will no longer be comfy and cozy and toasty and comfortable. Denying me. What if the destruction rate of the human children does not reach the required quotas? You think I'm joking? Then you don't know about the NEA. What if the deadening rate of TV watchers does not achieve the required goals, and an election occurs without the propagandists being in control? No politician wants to be in an election that is not under propaganda control, paid for by their idiot supporters, their idiot voters, as much as possible. Why do you think they have those doofus rallies? What would happen to the endless liars that must exist in an environment of total lies, like the queer coalitions, What if the lies no longer work and the dead and stagnant environment that perverts require is no longer possible? No longer possible because the outer environment around the queer coalitions, which is the real world, will no longer allow it. That's you. If you're not in a queer coalition, that's talking about you. And are not allowing it by not doing anything in their own natural environments that the queer coalitions want them to do. Nothing. Nothing. If a queer coalition wants it, nada. Zip. Zilch. No cooperation. Making it impossible for the queer coalitions to exist. Their entire game is fakery dependent upon lies, and accepted by all of us out here. Don't you understand that? Without our acceptance of those sewers, those mobile, many-headed sewers called queer coalitions, they cannot exist. If the lies no longer work, either new lies have to be created at a much higher level because the entire population is thinking much more, or lying is no longer possible. You have any idea what that would mean to a propagandist? Do you have any idea what that would mean to a deviant or a politician or a perverted military type that wants to run over our houses with their tanks? If lies no longer work, and they cannot run over our houses with their tanks and then lie about it, and say it was our fault, if the lies no longer work, either new lies have to be created at a much higher level because the entire population is thinking much more, or lying is no longer possible. As soon as lies are not possible to any extent in any environment, the deviants lose control. They cannot twist and create their own false environment on the dead body of another environment if their lies no longer work. If the previous environment that they poisoned no longer listens to them, rejects their lies, and can think for themselves, that environment and all of its cubic measurements, three-dimensional, is no longer a place that the deviants can control and thrive in. Some people complain that I always write about thinking. Before I get to that, let's think about that. Cubic measurements. Any environment. I remember living in the hideous Boston Horde Zone in a place called the Back Bay. And it was filled with old-style apartment buildings with very small rooms. Room living. It wasn't really apartment living. It was room living. I don't think it even had a bathroom. It was a room. It was about 14 feet wide and about 24 feet long. and it had a fireplace. And that's all it was. And the bathroom was outside in the hall. That's not apartment living. That's room existence. That's hovels. Rectangular caves. Even so, even as limited as that is, every one of those rooms is an environment. If you're unfortunate enough to live in one of those, it is your environment. It's what we are talking about here. Cubic measurements. That environment and all of its cubic measurements is no longer a place that the deviants can control and thrive in, even if it's only your room. And the next room has got satanic orgies going on. Move away. But wherever you go, your place is your environment. And you can kick this queer shit right out by not accepting lies. I mean, get strong about it. I know what happens in the HBHC. They send around enforcement squads. I've also seen enforcement squads sent packing by outraged tenants. I've seen queer enforcement squads attack people in their rooms for not bowing and scraping before 2 or 3 perverts that were walking down the sidewalk, before which all other persons in the back bay must grovel and show subservience to and bow before. Because they did not, queer enforcement squads were sent to their rooms. And I've seen the tenants of those rooms, outraged by it, counterattack and send those queer enforcement squads scampering down the stairs and back out into the street with as little as a broom. A broom. Counterattacking and beating them over their queer heads with a broom, sending them down the stairs and back out into the street. Your environment. They have no franchise on it. They do not own it. They do not have a lease on it. They do not have a lien on it. They do not have a psychological attachment to it. It's not an email with an attachment. They do not have a psychological propaganda lien on your environment. Unless you let them. Unless you will not fight back. Unless you are independent. Forcefully independent. Broom. I've got enough weapons in this place to defeat a platoon of queer swats. But I'm getting off the point. Well, maybe I am on the point, because some people complain that I always write about thinking. Well, maybe they want me to teach them how to use a grenade launcher. Oh, really? Some of you do want me to teach you how to use a grenade launcher. I'd be glad to. I can do that too, but what I am talking about is grenade launchers. Thinking is explosive. Thinking is powerful. Thinking is a weapon. Without thinking, all other weapons are irrelevant. Why use weapons if there is not thinking involved and it does not result in thinking that is free? I am teaching you how to use the best and largest and most important weapon you could ever have. And that is how to think. How to do what the enemy does not want you to do. That queer enforcement squad that attacked that tenant in that room, did they want the tenant to think for himself? Hell no, they just wanted him to fear, to piddle his underwear, to obey, to kneel, to be subservient, to be afraid of queer shit. They did not want him to think. But instead he did think. He picked up a broom and beat them up, and they ran away. And I smiled. And I went back into my room, and I put away my baseball bat.